In this video, I'm going to be bringing to you a new racket reviewer as well as just almost tennis expert that is on YouTube that you may not have heard of before. This is Alex Tennis that you see here on the channel. I've been talking with him back and forth, whether it be through YouTube, whether it be through Instagram. We've been wanting to collaborate for quite some time. So I figured the best way to do that starting off is going to be us just having a conversation so that you get to know him as well as you can kind of learn a little bit more about me as well. So, Alex, thank you so much for joining here on the channel. It's amazing having you all the way from Canada.
Hi, Brody. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So, Alex, the big thing that I want to start off with is just kind of like let us know what you were doing. How did you kind of get into tennis? Like, what's your story?
Actually, it's a weird story. I was really into hockey when I was younger because obviously I'm from Canada, so hockey is a big thing. But my parents didn't want me to play hockey because it was too much and the contact and all that stuff. So they were like, try to find another sports, and I had found some rackets in my basement. I was like, yeah, let's try play tennis. And my dad played a bit of tennis when he was younger, so he brought me to the court. But actually, they want me to play on the real court because he said that I wasn't good enough to play tennis. So I started on the wall, just hitting back and forth. And hearing that story, you would think that I'm a really consistent player, but I'm actually not that consistent. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
Yeah. No one beats the wall.
No, that's what I figured out.
Yeah. All right. So how long have you been playing for?
So right now I'm 21, so I've been playing since I'm 8 years old, I would say, but never really played like competitive tennis until I was like 17 or 18. So I was quite late. I always played. I have one of my best friends who's now playing D1 tennis. So I played with her a lot when I was younger. So obviously I learned a lot too, but never really played like competitive tennis for real until I was like 17 years old.
Okay, so then once you started playing competitively, were you set with the racket that you had, or were you still trying a ton of things, trying to figure out what worked for you because you hadn't really played extremely competitively up to this point?
Yeah, that's a good thing. I have the racket here. Um, oh, it's the weirdest, but I'll have it. It's a vocal one. So it's 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 this one over here. It's the Vocal C10 Evo. And the reason why I've decided to go with this racket is pretty basic. One of the owner of the shop where I work at is also one of my good friends, and he's the distributor in Canada of Vocal. So he handed me this racket, and he's like, "You could probably like this racket." I was playing with a Wilson Blade V8 at that time, and I tried this racket and just really enjoyed it. So when I played my competitive years, I was playing with the Vocal C10 Evo. Really liked it though.
Okay, nice. So you had the C10 Evo. What was the setup you were using then with it?
So I don't know if you can really see it over there, but I had it a bit of weight, and to be honest with you, it's like I had it because I like the visual of having weight over there. Um, and the thing is, like this racket, I don't know if you've tried the C10, the regular C10, but it's like
Mm,
no, it's like a 330 grams racket that is unchanged since like I think it's 94 or something. It's really really old. And so that was the first edition that they were like trying to make a modern version of this, so 310 grams. But I felt like it was lacking a bit of swing weight, so that's why I've added a bit of weight, but that wasn't doing too much to the setup. But yeah, I just like the look overall of the racket with lead tip.
nice. So how many rackets and just like strings in general did you have to go through before you found either that racket to play
Yeah,
competitively or that you're going through now, since I know reviews are a big part of your channel as well?
yeah. Um, like for me, there's two type of testing. Like there's the test that I do for my channel, like just like reviewing a racket that I don't really want to buy, or at least that I think that I don't want to buy. Um, and there's the review that I make like for me, like just finding a racket for me personally. Um, this racket, like I said, I've tested the C10, so I really enjoyed this racket, but it was kind of too powerful and the specs were too heavy for me to play competitive tennis. So when I tested this racket, it was just like a instant, like, okay, I gotta have this racket. And so I wrote to my friend and I was like, I want to have this racket. And he's like, yeah, okay, take two. So that's really how I got this racket. In terms of string, it's weird. And when I first went to that store that opened in 2000, and I think it's like 2020 or something like that, during COVID, they handed me the Vocal Cyclone Tour. And I really enjoyed this string. I played in a Head Prestige Pro, and I really liked this string. But the more I was playing with it, the more I felt like I was lacking a bit of control, even though I liked the spin that it was providing. So they were just like, okay, so if you think that it's too powerful, then go with the Cyclone. It's basically the same string. It's a 8-sided shaped string, but it's not twisted. So a bit more stiff, a bit more control. And since then, I never looked back. It was just an easy choice for me.
Nice. So you've had Cyclone going in there. Cyclone, great string, also great value string, especially if someone's looking for a nice polyester to just give you spin. And Cyclone does well with it. Now with you playing, if I remember correctly from what we talked about, or just from seeing some reviews, you also coach as well, because you've kind of called yourself, or people in your comments have called you Coach Alex.
Yeah.
So how long have you been coaching for, and is that what you're currently doing?
Okay, so I've been coaching since I'm 16, so I would say 2019, and my evolution in coaching has been like that, because I didn't have a really good like player background or stuff like that, like some of other coaches have. So it took me some time to just get it started, like into more recreative tennis, or we say like recreational tennis. And then I was fortunate enough to go into more a competitive structure um, in the same place. And then finally started to have more hours. I decided that it would be my real job. Like I really want to do this. I really like coaching. And since this year, so beginning of September, I'm now the assistant director of my club. So it's been going like this. Thank you.
Very nice, very nice. So what are you kind of doing as assistant director for your club? Are you coaching kids? Are you coaching adults? Just
Yeah.
giving lessons? What
Yeah.
are we doing?
So it's a junior high performance program. So I coach player from 5 years old, just starting in a competitive setup, to like player that are gonna play maybe D1 next year. So it's a pretty broad audience. The goal is different obviously, but I like to have those differences between groups because I don't like to stick with the same age, with the same group. So it's pretty cool for me to have like different ages, different level, and I really like the competitive aspect of the structure, obviously.
Nice, very nice. So what would you say is probably one of the biggest beliefs that you have to either break or instill into your players as a coach to help them further their game, whether they've just started coaching with you or you've been with them for quite a while?
I think that for them, like result is everything, but it's actually not always the case. Like sometimes a result could be a big warning. Let's say you think that you're really good in tennis, you think that you have a really good technique, you think that you can handle pretty much every situation, and you play against a player that you think that is not that good and you lose, then that's a big sign, yes. But sometimes when you're trying to find a progression, result won't really show your progression, and that's when you need to, as a coach, show them what is really progress. It's hard, sometimes, but I think it's one of the most important thing to make them understand and make them be able to coach themselves. I think it's one of the most important thing too.
Gotcha. Do you have anything like specific you send them off kind of like homework for any of them, to where it's like if they have one of those big match, I'll say disappointments, or those big just like realizations like, oh, I may not have been what to the level I was. Do you have them do anything specific once they get home or next time you're on court?
Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing is to, yes, give them homework, that's for sure, but to watch what are they gonna do after this loss. I have a player that I'm coaching. He's been struggling. He was under 12, pretty good under 12 in Quebec. Now went to under 14, but he's struggling with the power, with all that stuff, and he lost against a like 10-year-old, really really good player, but still a 10-year-old player. And the first thing that we asked them was like, can you try to do like a basket of serve every day? And he said yes, and he actually did it. It's been the second week that he's been doing it. And so for me, that's really what shows it's not the most talented player, but for me just shows the dedication to the sport compared to, let's say, someone who's losing, and you're saying like, okay, do a basket of serve every day, and they saying yes, and they're just doing it for a day, and then they forget that they have to do it. So yeah, for me that's the most important thing, to see how they are self-motivated to do the job, or at least the job. It's still fun, but yeah.
Yeah, and I bet as their coach, you every time you get one of them that actually does what you say, you're just kind of like, yes,
Yeah.
someone actually did. You're like, he or she, they're gonna actually break through. They're gonna do
Yep.
good.
Hopefully.
Well, yeah, if they're getting coached by you, that it's not a hopefully, it's just gonna happen.
I hope so.
Okay. So then with all of the videos that you do kind of on your channel, you're reviewing a ton of rackets. You also do tend to do a little bit more lighter rackets, which if a lot of people, especially us as men, if we're playing, we don't usually like to play with the lighter rackets because we think it's either too light for us or we think we're going to throw our arm out because of how light the thing is, and we're so used to the heavier rackets. What would you say is probably the biggest help that you've been able to have from doing all of your reviews for your students? Like, how do you translate that to them?
Yeah, really good question. For me, like at the beginning when I started to do those light racket review, um, I was like, I'll do it, but I don't think it's gonna do good, you know. But the thing that was really important for me was like, I want to do it because at the end of the day, I want to review as many racket as possible to give my subscriber a broad idea of what is my value in terms of what I like, what I feel is a great racket, what is not. It might not be a racket that I like personally, like it's not my type of weight that I'll use, but I can say that this racket is good or not. So that was my first thought when I went into those review, and I have to say I was kind of shocked to see how well it was doing. I mean, how well for the number of subscribers that I have, obviously, but like was kind of doing really well, and I start to think about the fact that as reviewer we tend to gravitate more towards like 300 grams to like 330 grams, and we like to review big racket, heavy racket, because we're a good player and all that stuff. But it's not always the case. Like sometimes you can review lighter racket, and there's practically no light racket reviews. So if you're doing it, then you're probably one of the only person to do the review on YouTube. So obviously people will subscribe and people will be interested by what you had to say about this racket. So that was the first part of my answer. But yeah, it's interesting that you brought up that it could help my player also. And that's the thing, I've been going through a couple of racket change at the moment with my players, and that's definitely something that I've been thinking about. Like, let's say they're trying an EZone 100 Hell, and I know how this racket feels. I know that this racket is great when it's, let's say, a 300-gram version, but the 270 is kind of not the best. So it really helps me to have a bigger idea of the market, because the market is not only like 300-gram or 310 grams racket.
Gotcha. Okay. So then with your students, how many of them have fought you trying to be like, no, I don't need to use that light of racket, or I don't want to use that racket. I want to use what I want. I want to use what Rafa's used.
And you know what? It's the opposite. I know it might sound weird, but for me, it's the opposite. We have some players that are playing, let's say, with the Aero Rafa 270 grams racket, and I'm like, you need to go to like 290, 285. and they don't want to switch because they're so used to that light racket. So it's weird. It's really the opposite for the moment. Um, in terms of having a racket that is too heavy and switching, I would say it's more adults. That sometimes I teach some adults and they're like, I like this, let's say, RF signature. And I'm like, yeah, but you know that it's too heavy, like you're a beginner. No, I just like it because it's too solid for me. And I like the fact that it's stable. Yes, obviously it's stable, but like you can't swing around with this racket. So I would say it's more with adults. And when I was working a bit more in the store, I had a situation like this where the clients really wanted to have the RF, and I just gave up. Like after trying to tell them for like to tell him for like 10 minutes that it's not the best option, I was like, okay, you know what, go with it. Like at the end of the day, a sell is a sell. So yeah, but with Junior, no, it's I would say that they're really looking at me in terms of gear, and I'm really happy with that. When I entered this structure of competitive structure, I was kind of afraid because like there were some coaches that weren't really giving great advice in terms of gear, and I was like, hey, I know gear, I know stuff, but I was new, so it was harder. But then people start to realize that I know a bit about gear, and they're starting to ask me a bit more. So yeah, I'm happy to be that gear guy in the structure, that's for sure.
Nice. Now all of the talk it's just snowballing. So all the kids you have worked with and the adults, they're all just like, "Oh, you need help? You go talk to Alex. You need help? You go
Yeah,
watch Alex." Then you're just like,
exactly.
"Fine."
Yeah, and I like to do it too. So it's like for me it's fun, and they're now asking what I'm playing with. Like as a coach, I really like to have a different racket in my hand, not for coaching, but I mean just for visual purposes. Like I like to have sometimes different racket in my hands. And I've been fortunate enough to be with Wilson for since September. And so sometimes I'm coaching with the RF, sometimes I'm coaching with the ship, and people are there and asking me like, oh, what is the racket that you have in your hand and all that stuff. So they're I don't know, they're just starting to think a bit more about gear, and so I feel like it's cool. I don't want them to be too much into gear. Like I don't want them to think about, oh, I lost my game, but my string was at 52, could be at 51.95 instead, and I don't want them to be like this. But if they know a bit more about gear because of me, then I'm happy. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Anyone that is so obsessed to their string gauge or the tightness of it to zero point zero 0.01 of a difference in terms of how tight or how just loose it is, I'm like, okay,
No, that's too much.
that's probably not what's causing the issue here. Let's look elsewhere. So so with all of that, you've been helping coach a lot of kids. You're assistant club director at your club. You haven't talked much about necessarily the store. So kind of fill us in. What do you do at the store? How are you working with people? Are you just recommending gear? Are you stringing? What are you
Mhm.
kind of doing there?
So when I first started to go to that store called Racketville, um, it was just for me to find a new racket. I was playing with the Wilson Pro Staff 97 LS, but the big issue with the Pro Staff, and it's still something that I'm saying, even though I'm sponsored with Wilson and all that stuff, it's like you go from a 290 grams racket to a 315 grams racket. So it's impossible to make a switch. You have to add weight. You have to do, you can't just buy a racket, let's say Pro Staff 205 grams. That's the big thing that is missing in that Pro Staff lineup, I feel. Um, and so I just went on, to try rackets. And so they handed me some vocal racket. I think there were a Pure Strike 2 and a Prestige. I finally decided to go with the Prestige. Big mistake, too tough to play. But like during those days, I was like, I need to have a lot of control. I thought that I was hitting hard, but I was actually not. So, yeah, so I was breaking strings like one or twice a week. So I was kind of always there. And they were seeing that I was really like not knowing my gear, but like I knew what the blade was doing. I knew the gravity. I knew like I was asking them some question, and they felt like I knew a bit of gear, and I knew more than just like usual people. And so they were consistently making the joke of like, "Do you want to work there?" And but it was just like a joke. And so finally one day arrived, and they're like, "Yeah, but for real, like, do you want to work with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, maybe. Like, I don't know how to string. I don't know, but like, I think I can learn." So I spent a month learning how to string, learning a bit about gear, but also trying a lot of rackets because at that time it was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years since I've tried like pretty much every racket of the lineup. When I switched to my ProSat 97 LS, I've tried, the Instinct, the Burns, but like I was looking at the wall and there were no Burns, no Instinct, no. So I had to relearn a bit what was the thing, even though like I was watching some review on YouTube also. So that's really where it started off. And then, it's, I think I'm pretty good in terms of, I'm not the best seller in terms of money, but like, I think I'm able to make people believe that I'm giving them the best option. And for me, that was the most important thing I would say for me. Like, yes, I can sell you the most expensive gear, but at the end of the day, if you're not happy, you're not coming back. So I rather sell you like something that is not that expensive, but you will come back because you trust me. So that was my big like thing when I was selling over there.
Yeah, I can agree and attest that because with the store that I work at too, there's been plenty of times where people have come in and they've just wanted, say, like, especially when it first came out, the new RF01 Pro,
Mm-hmm.
everyone wanted that thing. Everyone loved Roger. They're all just like, I want it. I was like, hold on, let me ask you this. Have you ever played with a pro staff or have you ever played with the racket? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, don't buy it. Demo it first. Make sure you even
Yeah.
like it. One of the best programs any store can have is the demo program so that people can actually try the racket, make sure
Yeah.
it works for them, doesn't cause tennis elbow, doesn't cause injury, doesn't make sure it works for their game. And people just have that option. A lot of people actually don't know about it, though, which I find surprising, but they come in, they ask for that. And I'm just like, please don't do this. And then as soon as they try it, they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad you talked us out of that. And then now they have that familiar sense like, okay, they're not just trying to make a quick buck. They actually want us to actually go about and do what we need to in order to help improve. And I feel like that's kind of where you found too working in the store as well.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think we're there. That's our job, because yes, people will try to buy racket by just, oh, Fed is my favorite player, I need to buy this racket. But it's hard to be like, oh, calm down, try a racket. But I think, there's some seller out there that just sells rackets, so it's okay. But I mean, we're more into like knowing what this racket is doing, what this string is doing, what this shoes is doing. So I think for us, it's really important to know what it is, what is the product, for who it's made. I think that's the most important thing. And I've been really thinking about that. And like on my channel, I never really had a bad review. And I feel like sometimes people can just say like, oh, you're never saying anything bad about the product and all that stuff. It's not that I want to make a positive review for everything, but for me, it's like if it's out, it has to be for someone. And I need to find that person that's going to fit into that product, or that's going to like this racket, or and so that's why for me I don't like to review stuff and say that racket is bad because it's bad and it's bad. So that's not the thing that I want to do. I want to find really for who it's made, and after that I can have my opinion. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I'm in about the same boat. It's like with reviewing rackets and everything, you will always want to make sure that we can help fine tune anyone that actually is looking for the racket. Because no matter what, if they make it, it is there for someone. So we just have to help find that player, make sure that they get all the info they need, and to make sure they try it. So that make sure it doesn't hurt them or do anything else. That's kind of how I see our job, whether it be in the store or with our channels that we have. We're just trying to make the best we're just trying to help them make the best decision possible for themselves.
Yeah. And for me it's a tough situation. Like it's hard to find the right line between being honest to give them the right thoughts about the racket, but at the same time stay, I would say, professional. And it's the same thing with the level of play. Like when we're talking about light racket and all that stuff, it's like some people were saying, yes, you thought that this racket was, let's say, unstable when you were at the net, but like, to be fair, when you're at the net, you're not playing your level. Let's say if you're using a 270 grams racket, I was like, yeah, you know what? It's a fair point. But the opposite is also true. Like if I'm reviewing, let's say, the RF 01 Pro, which I haven't yet, but I would like to. It's like, do I really have the level to play with that kind of racket? I don't think so. So it's just to find the middle lane. Yeah, for the moment, I don't have a lot of people who commented about my level, which is a good thing, I think. But we'll see if when I start to grow a bit more, have more subscribers, if people are gonna talk a bit more about this.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed. A lot of people they'll see my reviews and they're like, dude, why aren't you actually like showing hitting footage? I'm just like, calm down. It's in the works. I don't have enough cameras or storage on my actual camera to get this going.
Yeah,
But
that's another thing too. Yeah.
but with all of the reviews you've done and just all the kids that you've coached, what's probably the number one sleeper racket that you found that most people don't know about but actually should try next? It can be for any level, or you can have different levels based off where you want to go.
That's a really good question. I'll go with a racket that not a lot of people tried because it's a new one. It was actually existing before, but the specs really changed. It's called the Vocal Vostra 9, and there's a 290 gram version and there's a 305 gram version. So this is a quite thin beam. I'd say it's a 21 millimeters consistent beam or something like that. I don't remember. It has a V shape at the end of the, so it's like a bit like this one over here, but it's 100 square inch head size, thin like this, but really, really stable. And you have a V shape over here. And this racket is really good because it's like you have a lot of control, you have some feel, you have some power because of the 100 square inch head size. So if you never tried a vocal racket before, it's like a Babola feel, but it doesn't hurt your arm. So that's just like the in-between perfect. Really enjoyed this racket actually. And I haven't seen, to be honest, a lot of people play with it at the moment, but definitely a racket that people should try. And to be honest with you, I think I've enjoyed a bit more the 290 grams racket compared to the 305 grams. So yeah, kind of a weird take, but yeah, I think that this racket could be something that people could like.
Right. Well, Alex, I know you do have to get going here real soon, so I did want to say thank you so much for doing this. It was amazing to have you here, and I cannot wait to see what else we do here coming up in the future. And if there's any final thing to say, what would you say, as well as just give out your channel name? I know it may have been popped up here a few times in the actual just video itself, but show us where people can find you and where they can see all these reviews we've been talking about with all these light rackets, all the different types of rackets, and all your other coaching.
Yeah, so I'll for sure comment on the video. So find me in the comment section down below. And don't forget to subscribe to Brody Taylor. He's also a really good reviewer if you don't know.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex. It's been a pleasure having you. I can't wait to work with you again in the future. And as always, take care.